idea can change the world.
Imagine, just for a moment, living in a world where the sun completely dictated your entire existence. I really want you to put yourself there. Picture the 19th century. The sun dips below the horizon and the world just stops. Schools shut their doors, bustling factories go completely silent, all meaningful work practically grinds to a halt. If you wanted to read or work or even just see your family in your own home after dusk, you had to rely on candles and oil lamps. And let me tell you, they were incredibly dim, they were notoriously expensive, and honestly, they were incredibly dangerous. They'd fill homes with soot and smoke and constantly threaten to burn the place down. For thousands and thousands of years, humanity just sort of accepted this. It was just a fact of nature. Darkness was simply an undeniable, unbeatable part of the human experience. A world plunged into total darkness every single night. It's actually kind of hard for us to even wrap our heads around today, isn't it? I mean, the sheer limitation of it is staggering. But amidst all of that accepted, ordinary darkness, there was one boy who looked at the world a bit differently. Now, he wasn't born into some wealthy, connected family. He certainly wasn't considered a child prodigy by anyone's standards. In fact, pretty much every adult in his life thought he would never amount to anything at all. He failed time and time and time again. But he possessed something far more powerful than raw natural genius. He had this burning, almost obsessive habit of asking one simple question: what if there's a better way?
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unraveling a story that literally changed the very fabric of human civilization. We're diving into the remarkable journey of Thomas Alva Edison, the inventor whose relentless, unyielding curiosity helped humanity conquer the night and brought light to millions. But to truly understand exactly how he lit up the world, we can't just start with a light bulb. We have to start at the very beginning, with a deeply misunderstood kid who simply refused to stop asking questions.
Section 1. The Misunderstood Boy.
Okay, let's dive into this. To understand the inventor, we absolutely must first understand the boy. Born in 1847, Thomas had this relentless curiosity that, quite frankly, infuriated his teachers. While all the other kids were outside playing, Thomas was utterly consumed by figuring out how things worked. Why did birds fly? How exactly did steam move giant engines? If a teacher gave him one answer, it would instantly spawn 100 more questions. And after just a few short months of formal schooling, one teacher allegedly threw his hands up and labeled the boy addled, basically suggesting his brain was mixed up and he was entirely incapable of learning. But his mother? No way. She totally refused to accept that. She pulled him right out of school, taught him at home, and crucially, she never ever punished his curiosity. By the time he was just 10 years old in 1857, he had built a full-blown chemistry laboratory in his basement. And by 12, he was literally writing and printing his own newspaper, the Grand Trunk Herald, while riding on a moving train between Port Huron and Detroit. And every single dollar he made, he invested it straight back into buying more scientific equipment.
But listen, this boundless curiosity definitely had a price. Thomas had actually set up a tiny, makeshift laboratory right inside the train's baggage car. Well, one day, the train lurched, a chemical spilled, and a fire broke out. The conductor was absolutely furious. He managed to put out the flames, but then he threw Thomas, along with all his precious equipment, right off the train. Now, around this time, Thomas was already experiencing significant hearing loss, and some historical accounts suggest the physical trauma of this incident might have actually worsened it. Most people would look at going deaf as a tragic, insurmountable setback, but Thomas, he later said his reduced hearing was actually a massive advantage. It blacked out all the noisy, pointless distractions of the world and allowed him to fiercely, deeply concentrate on his work. Where everybody else saw a devastating weakness, he found his greatest strength.
Section 2. Learning from Early Failures.
That unique ability to reframe disaster into an advantage really became his defining trait. As a young man, a moment of sheer, impulsive bravery completely altered his destiny. Thomas saw a small child wandering onto the railroad tracks, right into the path of a massive oncoming train. Without hesitating for even a second, he sprinted onto the tracks and pulled the kid to safety. The child's immensely grateful father rewarded Thomas by teaching him how to operate the telegraph, which was essentially the internet of the 1800s. He mastered it and began inventing. Now, what's really interesting about this comparison is the stark contrast between his first two major inventions. Take a look at the electric vote recorder. It was designed for lawmakers to instantly and accurately record their votes, and technically speaking, it was flawless. But politicians completely rejected it because they actually liked the slow, drawn-out voting process. It gave them time for backroom deals. So, it was a massive commercial failure. But then, look at the improved stock ticker. He built this after seeing firsthand how Wall Street financial markets went into absolute panic mode when their existing machines broke down. He fixed a broken ticker, totally improved the design, and boom, it was a massive, life-changing financial success.
That jarring, frustrating failure of the vote recorder taught Edison what is arguably the ultimate business lesson. He completely stopped asking, "What can I invent?" and started asking a much more crucial question: what problem needs solving? This was a total game changer. He realized that you should never invent something just because you have the technical skills to pull it off. You must invent something that people actually need, something that solves a real-world pain point. When he sold the rights to his improved stock ticker, he made an absolute fortune. But he didn't buy a mansion, he didn't go out and buy luxury goods or fancy clothes. He poured almost every single penny right back into his true love: research. Section 3. The Menlo Park Magic.
And that incredible reinvestment brings us to the most legendary chapter of his entire story. You know, we often have this romanticized myth of the lone genius, a solitary figure having a sudden eureka moment in complete isolation. Well, Edison entirely shattered that myth by building Menlo Park. This wasn't just a workshop, it was one of the world's first industrial research laboratories. Opening in 1876, Edison brought brilliant scientists, engineers, expert glassblowers, and precise machinists all together under one single roof to tackle complex problems as a unified team. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of pure creation. And their secret weapon? Failure was totally expected. When an experiment inevitably blew up or fell apart, they didn't despair. They simply asked, "Okay, what did we learn from this?" and immediately moved on to the next attempt. The newspapers of the day were so astounded by the sheer volume of inventions pouring out of this place that they dubbed him the Wizard of Menlo Park. But let's be real, there was no magic happening here. It was just brutal, exhausting, relentless hard work. Having totally mastered communication and business devices, Edison set his sights on the ultimate enemy, the darkness itself. He asked the most audacious, arguably crazy question of his life: what if every home, school, hospital, and factory could have safe, reliable electric light? At the time, highly respected scientists called the idea totally impossible. They literally laughed at him. Sure, previous inventors had managed to make bulbs that glowed for a few seconds before violently burning out, or they were so absurdly expensive that no average person could ever afford them, or they just completely melted. Creating light wasn't the hard part. Creating a light that ordinary people could afford and that they could rely on for hours at a time, that was considered an impossible fantasy.
Section 4. Conquering the darkness.
But Edison was used to being doubted. I mean, he had been called addled as a boy, rejected as a young inventor, and heavily criticized his entire career. He gathered his team at Menlo Park and launched what was basically the greatest technological race in human history to conquer the dark. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of the problem. A light bulb by itself is completely, utterly useless. Edison grasped something profound. He couldn't just invent a bulb. He had to invent the entire supporting ecosystem from scratch. He needed to create massive power stations to generate the electricity, the vast network of underground wires and cables to carry it through cities, the safety switches to control it, the meters to measure it so it could be billed, and the actual sockets to plug the bulbs into. He wasn't just building a consumer product, he was attempting to build the entire modern electrical grid all at the exact same time. To make the actual bulb work, they needed a filament. That's the tiny thread inside the glass that would glow bright white, without immediately burning to a crisp. The laboratory operated at a favor pitch, almost around the clock. They tested cotton, they tested linen, they tested paper, different types of wood, obscure plant fibers, and even bamboo from the other side of the world. We're talking thousands and thousands of exhausting experiments. Days turned into weeks, and weeks bled into months. Critics were circling like sharks, calling the whole endeavor a massive, embarrassing waste of time and money. But Edison, he didn't see these failures as setbacks. Every single time a material shattered in the vacuum or burned to ash in seconds, he viewed it as vital, hard-earned information. Every failure simply eliminated a wrong turn in this massive maze, bringing them one step closer to the exit.
And then, finally, the breakthrough. After thousands upon thousands of failed attempts, the team discovered that a carefully carbonized piece of sewing thread, sealed tightly inside a glass bulb with a high-quality vacuum to remove the oxygen, could glow for an extended period without burning out. It was real, a practical, affordable, incandescent lamp. On New Year's Eve, 1879, Edison opened up Menlo Park and invited the public to come see it for themselves. As the cold winter darkness fell over the snowy New Jersey town, electric lights suddenly illuminated the streets, the buildings, and the laboratory itself. The crowd stood in absolute stunned awe. It literally looked like the distant future had arrived overnight.
Let's move to and see how this builds. Section 5, the legacy of light.
That incredible demonstration in Menlo Park was only the beginning. Edison now had to bring that magic from a snowy New Jersey laboratory into the homes of everyday people. In 1882, he opened the Pearl Street Commercial Power Station in New York City, officially and forcefully launching the electric age. Think about the impact. Factories could now operate safely and efficiently at night. Hospitals finally had reliable, bright light for life-saving surgeries. The day no longer ended just because the sun went down, and human productivity completely skyrocketed. But Edison didn't stop there. Over his lifetime, he was granted more than 1,000 U.S. patents. His team developed a phonograph, letting people hear recorded human voices and music for the very first time in history. They did pioneering foundational work in early motion pictures. He spent his entire life constantly scanning the horizon, looking for the very next problem to solve.
Because of all this, people everywhere love to call him a genius. But Edison himself had a very, very different view of his own success. He uttered a phrase that has echoed through history ever since. He said, "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." He truly, deeply believed that effort mattered infinitely more than raw talent. Brilliant ideas are cheap. Everybody has ideas. But actually doing the agonizing, grueling, day in and day out work to bring those ideas to life, that is what actually changes the world.
So the crucial point is, what can we really take away from this extraordinary life? This explainer boils it all down to these 5 core pillars. Number 1, stay curious. Never stop asking why or how, just like that young boy in Ohio who drove his teachers crazy. Number 2, failure is information. When your experiments blow up in your face, just like they did in that train baggage car, don't quit, learn from it. Number 3, solve real problems. Don't waste your time building the vote recorder, build the stock ticker. Create things that people actually need. Number 4, build great teams. The absolute wizardry of Menlo Park was a collective, collaborative effort, not a solo mission. And number 5, never stop improving. Even after literally lighting the world, Edison just kept chasing the next horizon.
You know, we walk into a room today and we flip a switch without even a second thought. But that light pouring from the ceiling is the direct result of thousands of frustrating failures and one man who simply refused to quit. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. The next time you face a bitter rejection, or the next time your grand, ambitious idea completely falls apart, I want you to remember the little boy they called adult. History is not written by the people who never fail. That's a myth. History is written by the people who absolutely refuse to let failure be their final chapter. What if your next massive failure is exactly the key you need to unlock your greatest breakthrough? Stay curious and keep moving forward.